to another episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? I'm your host, Karen E. Osborne, and I'm so glad that you returned and then you're back with us. As you know, I'm the author of 4 novels, as is my guest today. She and I are just, we're just doing it. 4 novels out the door. Mary Ann Noe. Did I pronounce that right?
You bet. Yes.
Excellent. Mary Ann and I had the pleasure of recently spending a weekend together at a conference, which was so fun. And you've met her before. The last time was last October when she had a book coming out. And this time we have the pleasure of sharing publication day with her. So that is so, so cool. She has a new book. So let me just read this. It's Water, the Color of Slate. Could you show it? Look at that. Isn't that lovely? All right. And she's going to tell us all about it. Mary Ann is a photographer. She's a blogger. She's an award-winning short story writer, essay writer, poetry writer, and as I mentioned, 4 novels. And this story is about, I'll just tell you a little bit because she's going to tell you all the rest, about 3 women, different generations, bound together by history and mystery. Louise Wright, 19th century, her 20th century great-granddaughter, and Lou's, one of her great-granddaughters, Lou's teenage granddaughter. And each are full of conflicts, questions, and contradictions. Doesn't that sound cool? Welcome, welcome, Mary Ann. So last October, you were here and you were telling us about a handful. Show them that beautiful cover.
It's behind me. I'll get it.
Yeah. Because it's kind of hard to see it from a distance.
Talk among yourselves.
You probably remember this one. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? That's one of my favorite covers.
I know, me too. I just love the cover design.
It's just gorgeous. So how has this year been of marketing Handful of Pearls and writing of Water, the Color of Slate? How's this year gone?
Busy, and it's getting busier. Not that I mind that at all, but this week, as you said, we were at a teachers conference a writers conference recently and got to meet each other in person, which was wonderful. So that took up some time. And then I came home to a week just absolutely jam-packed with book events and interviews and this and that and the other thing. So it's been very busy. And I don't write every day. I try and write, a couple times a week. If I go longer than 2 weeks, then I get nervous and I want to sit down and write again. But yeah, it's been interesting. It was quiet for a while, and then all of a sudden things started to pick up. And Handful of Pearls, I mean, I have to read you the first line. Now, Karen, you've read it, so you know, but oh my, the rest of you people out there, this is a wonderful line. My mother gave it to me. I learned to play golf so I could smoke. There you go. And so that got me started. And The Water, the Color of Slate, it was, I don't know really how it got started, but I wanted to write another book about women, about families. And Water, the Color of Slate is the 2 families are so far apart in time, the late 1800s and then contemporary times. And the grandmother, Lou, and her granddaughter, Cappy, the courts gave the grandmother her granddaughter because she was the only living relative, and the 2 of them hate each other. So they have to figure out some way to work this out, because this is Lou's son's daughter or stepdaughter, and so she doesn't want to give her up because it's her connection to her dead son. So she doesn't want anything to do with her. So there's that inner conflict too. But they both ultimately discover they're very interested in town history, because this family has been in town forever. And then family history, because the great-grandmother, way back there in the late 1800s, turns out she fell in love with a Ho-Chunk man, a Native American man. And of course, in those years, it would be absolutely forbidden. So that set up another conflict. And when you do genealogy, you make assumptions that are correct because you find the right information, but you also make assumptions that are totally out in left field. They aren't true at all. Well, that's exactly what they do. But the reader gets all of Louise, the woman back in the 1800s. They get all of her story and how she got to where she was and what happened to her and all. So we as readers know what happened to her and why. And then
we see the mistakes and we see the things that the family is getting wrong.
yes. So that's and I found that I do a lot of multi-generational family conflict and resolution kind of thing, so
I like multi-generational stories.
I do too.
I like those a lot. And I love the going back in time and contemporary, it makes for such interesting story. So what does the title mean?
Well, it took me a long time to figure out what to title it, but there is a lake and a little cove, and Lou, the grandmother, or I'm sorry, Louise, the great grandmother, used to go down to the cove to bathe because this is the late 1800s, and if it was fine. And so she would watch the water in this cove, and a lot of it kind of reflected what mood she was in. So sometimes the water was blue and sometimes it was indigo. And when she was in a really dark state, she'd look out and go, the water is the color of slate. And so that's where the title came from, was her.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. So, what do you like? So when you think about the women in the story, what do you like about them?
Well, Lou, the contemporary grandmother, is kind of snarky, and I've always wanted to write a snarky. I was inspired by Louise Penny's Three Pines series, Inspector Gamache. In several of the books, there's a woman poet, whose name is Ruth Zardo, and she is an ultra snarky woman. Lou isn't quite that snarky, but I just wanted to see if I could do that, because I don't think that's me, but I don't know, maybe it is.
I don't think you're snarky.
So I liked that beginning, and then I taught teenagers for 30 years, and so I thought I can do a teenager. They can be kind of snarky too,
Yes.
And Louise, back in the past, was a strong woman. She was an only child, and her father would take her on business trips and taught her how to ride and all this sort of stuff. And so she was a semi-independent woman already, although she was very young at the time. So I liked that. And so all three of the women are very different, and yet they have a common iron fortitude
Yes.
about them. So
yeah. That sounds that's one of the things that I love about all of my books. The women I write about, strong women like you do, and that inner core, and even though they're flawed, and even though they make mistakes, and there's that inner strength that carries them. Yeah.
yeah.
So you mentioned briefly that you had all of these events lined up and everything for your launch and interviews, but can you share just a little bit of what your launch has been like?
Well, this year I have to get to it yet. But I am really excited about it, because this is a gala event sort of put on by a group called Tricia's Troops in a nearby town here. And they help women that have breast cancer, both emotionally and financially. And they were looking for an author to come to be part of this celebration. And my publicist said, oh, she's a perfect fit. She had breast cancer. She wrote this article for a magazine that was very humorous about how chemo and radiation can be fun. And so that's what it's called, Tricia's Troops. And they invited me to come and be part of that. So later on, I will be doing that. And
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it's a wonderful service. I'm also a mentor for ABCD after breast cancer diagnosis, which is based here in Milwaukee. And they match people up that are in treatment and they want to talk to somebody that's been there already. And I'm out like 10 years. So I'm a mentor with them, and that is very, very fulfilling.
Yeah, the mom of my middle grandson is right in the middle of it now.
Oh,
She went through the surgery and first chemo and then surgery, and now she's getting radiation
yeah,
before
yeah.
they do the reconstruction.
Oh,
And
yes.
she's like 36 years old,
I know
but it's so good to know people who survived and are thriving.
yes.
That feels, so hopeful. And her doctor said to her, this is going to be a year from hell for 50 years of a good life.
That's right. Well, and if she needs somebody to talk to, send her to ABCD. They're online
Yeah.
and they match
Thank
up.
you. I might, after offline, I'll follow up with you because it's a
Yeah.
struggle. She's
Yeah.
a
Oh,
mom of two little boys and
yeah. Oh, it's tough,
yes.
tough, tough.
So one of the things that we of course like to also do is share lovely books that you've read
Oh,
and that you can recommend to the audience. And so do you have any?
do you have about a week and a half?
That
Well, I'm in the process of reading The Maid,
was
um,
very fun. That's a good book.
which I haven't. I just started it as I was sitting here waiting for our interview to begin, but it's really good. And I have a friend who has a granddaughter that's um, on the autism spectrum, so that makes it even more fun. Um,
Yeah.
and I like nonfiction. I'm working on a book that takes place during World War II in Paris and Prague, and another one that takes place in London. So I'm going down rabbit holes with a lot of research with that. So, and that's a lot of nonfiction stuff. But I read A Waiter in Paris, which was fun because he talks about his experiences in the kitchen and as a waiter. It's just a real eye opener, to say the least. A Waiter in Paris. And I just finished Other Birds, which is magical realism. And it's
Mm.
a small compound of people living together, like 4 or 5 people. And there are lots of surprises as you go along. And I just loved it. I went
Yeah.
back years ago. I read Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House. And I was talking about it with my daughter, and neither one of us could remember exactly. So I went back and reread that one. And it was so much more psychological than I had remembered. That's her stuff is scary.
Do you
Uh,
like rewrite? Do you like rereading books? Do you enjoy that?
I normally don't. And The Haunting of Hill House isn't a real long thing. It's more like a novella. Normally, I
Mm.
don't go back and reread. There are too many books in this world. I said, when I die, I hope God has a library because otherwise I'm in trouble. But another one I read was by Barbara Mahoney, The Book of Nature. And it looks at the spiritual side of nature and how you can connect with the creator, whatever you call it, through looking at nature. And she brought in poetry by Mary Oliver and all sorts of different things. It was a wonderful book, nonfiction.
Do you still write poetry?
I do. In fact, I'm workshopping some with I'm with the workshop group, and I have enough that I could put out a chapbook or maybe even a book of poetry, a small book, but I haven't
Mm.
pitched it because we haven't gone through all the poems yet. And I tend to write about nature, so
Mhm.
birds and such
I
things.
love, I just interviewed a poet who writes a lot about nature.
Mhm.
As you know, I record in advance, and so it'll be played coming up. His name is Don Jackson, and he is uh, his poetry just is so beautiful. I love poetry. I don't know why it's not more popular. Why more people don't? The people I think get scared of it,
Yeah. Well, and
but
you can pick it up
actually,
and
good
put it down.
poetry is so accessible.
Yes, yes. And you can pick it up and put it down, pick it up and put it down. It's not
Yes.
something you are committed to for a long period of time, like a novel.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. those all sound like wonderful, wonderful reads. I thank you for that. Our folks want to find you. They want to buy your books. They want to be in touch with you. So how can they do that?
The easiest place is to go to my webpage, which is MaryAnnNoe.com, MaryAnnNnoe. There's 3 N's in a row there, .com, MaryAnnNoe.com. And there you can find events that I'm going to. You can find cover designs for books, and you can see them behind me there. My other books, along with a little synopsis for each one. There's a tab to look at photos. I change photos every month. I do a blog post every month, and I have a contact list that I email people once a month and say, hey, the new blog post is out, and by the way, the new book is coming out, whenever. So it's a good way to communicate and not bug people, because they know they're only going to hear from me once a month, which is nice. So that's on there. And there's also a contact tab, and there's also a tab with discussion questions for my novels. I just started doing that.
That's very good. It helps book clubs, doesn't it?
Yes,
For them to have discussion questions. Well, that all sounds wonderful. And it is so nice to have you back. I hope all of you have enjoyed meeting Mary Ann, or re-meeting Mary Ann, remembering her. And if you want to look at the interview for the Pearls, remind me the name of the Pearls book.
A Handful of Pearls.
Handful of Pearls. Yes, a Handful of Pearls. If you're interested in listening to that review, I'll have the link for that as well. As we look at this.
Don't forget, viewers, Karen writes too. She did Tangled Lies, which was wonderful, and she's got a new one out called Reckoning. And go out there and get her books. They're great.
Thank you. But the newest one is actually True Grace.
Oh, True Grace. That's yes.
Yes, Reckonings was last year, and Tangled Lies was the year before that. But thank you so much. Thank you for mentioning them. And thank all of you for being with us. Follow Mary Ann, go on her website, subscribe to her newsletter, and I hope you are following me as well. Take care, everybody. See you next week on What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Bye.